subscribe.
Awesome, awesome. I thought they was both about 6'7", out and out, cold-blooded murderers. Ronnie Kray was a certified paranoid schizophrenic, and he was the man in charge. He was the boss of them. So it was always going downhill. They had a very fearsome reputation, and because they was inside for so long, no one ever got a chance to see them, or whether they became a mythical figure. They turned into a mythical figure rather than a real person. I do believe that they're that famous because the romantic naughty boy of the time. Yeah, they ran the boxing club. They helped everyone in the street. They only hurt their own. Yeah, there's a lot of romance around that. You understand what I mean? Whether it be true or not, it doesn't matter. None of us will ever know. We didn't live in that era. And everyone loves a good story. Let's not the truth ruin a good story. As far as fan mail goes, I know, but could you tell me what sort of fan mail they got while they was in prison? And how it grew more and more the longer they was in?
Unbelievable.
The fans that they actually had at the end were not alive when they was doing the crime.
Absolute massive, and the youth of today still want to know it. That is why they'll write more books. They'll make another film, Dave. You know that.
Yeah.
They'll make more. The lottery winner gave Reggie £100,000. Why would you go and give Reggie Kray £100,000? It's hero worship.
Well, he can only spend £4 a week. He's in prison. I don't know what you're going to do about it.
Well, he did give a lot of it away, and he subsidised a few people in there. But the fan mail was immense. Absolutely. Not so much Ronnie, because he wouldn't answer so many letters of Reggie.
Whole mythical thing about them, it is undeserved, but it seems like such a money-making and...
It's a gravy train.
Yeah, of course, and the new set of fans that are now reading up and picking up the Krays are 20-year-olds have never heard of it.
They're bought into the myth.
Do I think the public's interest in the Krays will continue? I bloody well hope so, because otherwise I'm out of a job. No. I do actually, yeah. As I said, there's always that fascination of criminal activity, that living outside the law thing, and I think they may have, or there was this whole thing that's been built up around them of that they were the legends. Somebody called them legends, and it's stuck forever. The legends of Kray. You look at their funerals, there were thousands and thousands of people online in the streets, etc., to their funeral. And this whole myth of the Krays is going to continue and be built up, and it's going to grow and grow until one day it's probably, Robin Hood was probably a thieving little horrible git, but now we think he was a hero, robbing from the evil sheriff of Nottingham and King John and giving and helping the poor. And I bet he didn't really do that. I bet he was an horrible thief and git who robbed anybody that came across his path. And I think possibly that's the Krays, and that's what will, by the time this comes out, they'll be lauded as heroes and get knighted in posthumously. Well, maybe not that much, but you know what I mean.
And he had two ambitions, money and status. He wanted to be very, very famous.
Do you know what? Why have the Krays become so popular is a very difficult question to answer. Number of reasons. Different people have it, like them for different reasons. I think there's a large majority of people, there are some people who think they look back on that whole crazy era with a kind of rose-tinted glasses, thinking, yeah, the streets wouldn't be the same if the Krays were still around. There'd be no mugging old ladies. There wouldn't be this. It wouldn't be that.
Krays legend is largely based on the publicity that they did in fact court. They had David Bailey, for example, who photographed them famously with their brother Charlie behind them. The three of them together. It's an iconic image. They wanted to look good. They saw themselves as hoodlums and gangsters, but in a sort of a Hollywood sort of fashion. They even courted Hollywood itself.
The infamy also came because they chose, with their self-publicity, to become, photographed with big legends of the day. So, when Sparrows Can't Sing was filmed at one of their clubs, Barbara Windsor was standing alongside them. She also had a lot of the other big names with her that night. And, George Raft, came in and was an ambassador at the Colony Club. He had his name on the cards. He was associated with the Krays. They're always photographed with the big name boxers like, Henry Cooper and others. So for me, it was because they courted the publicity and always were iconic figures, if you like. But the murders ultimately, which saw them lifed off, Cornell's and McVitie, and of course their involvement in the disappearance of Frank Mitchell, is what people always remember. And I think as well just the image, the iconic image of them in suits and walking through London in this reign of fear that they had is what ultimately makes them iconic. And subsequently now films have been made, over 3 films, another one in the pipeline, and now I think we're up to something like 60 books on the Krays. So that's why the legend is well and truly alive still.
Whenever there was a visiting American showbiz personality, for example, Judy Garland, I think, came over at one time and was invited down to the club for one purpose, to have the picture taken with the Krays. So they were very media conscious.
And I think there's also another reason people they are so popular is because people kind of look back on it as a kind of Robin Hood-y type line as well. They would rob the rich kid to the poor sort of thing. Except they didn't. They robbed from the rich, they robbed from the poor, they robbed from anybody. If they wanted money and you had it, they took it from you.
Why do you think they've become so worldly famous? Why?
Well, there were plenty of gangs at the time, wasn't there? But nobody wants to write books and make films, say, about the Richardsons. They don't want to write about the Nashes. They don't want to write about any other gang, only these two. I think basically it starts off with being twins, because there were 2 of them, and there weren't anybody else of twins in
And
the
at the time,
gang.
the East End of London was the main cog, yeah?
It was an East End, and it's grown into a myth. It's like a Robin Hood story now, isn't it?
If something is locked away from you, it becomes more mythical.
That's right.
But I'm afraid no one or nothing is as big as myth. And as their notoriety grew in the gangster world, they became involved in the gambling world, and that brought them into a completely different circle of people. And I'm sure that in that circle of people, they were just as popular as they were in every other circle of people. They were charismatic, a couple of young men. As they went out of the West End, there would be every different community talking about them. There would be the pop stars talking about them and clamouring to be in their favour. There would be the film stars, there were George Ross flying over from America to pop in and say hello, and even the gay community with Ronnie's antics was pro Kray. Everyone was talking about the Krays. It seemed to be the only thing to talk about in London worth talking about. Yeah, they were exciting, they were charismatic, they were dangerous, they were sexy. And on the fashion front, they were second to none. Right? Clothes were very important to them. You are first impressions mean a lot, even today. And they were sharp. I went to visit Ronnie Kray in Broadmoor, and he came down to visit me in a 3-piece pinstripe suit, white starched shirt with R&R on the pockets, R&R cufflinks, and looked as dapper as my barrister on the day he took me to the baby. They were sharp, make no mistake. And of course, that is very important. If you are a man that's been inherited or given the job of or gifted the part of being in charge, you have to look the part, and they looked the fucking part, yeah?
Yes, they definitely modelled themselves on Screen Gangsters. Definitely, they modelled themselves on. I don't know if they modelled themselves on George Raft, but that whole film noir, smart suits, and all that was definitely what they were about. Yeah, definitely.
So what did they think about the media attention that they were getting?
Loved it, Dave.
Yeah.
They loved it. They courted it.
but-
He could have wrote his own publicity book, Ronnie Kray. They loved it.
As they were, what they were getting famous for was against the law. You know, it does actually, it is a contradiction of terms, becoming a famous criminal. Yeah, the more famous you get, the less naughty you can be in real life.
That's right.
So they was carrying on being naughty, but wanted the press as well.
Yeah, which when he went to America, Ronnie, and met the mafia,
Yeah.
they don't court attention. Anything they want done, as you know, they get other people to do it. He wanted to do everything himself because I think that's what he was. He was an egomaniac, definitely. And he loved publicity, any publicity, which I've said started from when they was 14, 15.
I think I
on
can
paper.
understand that a little bit.
Yeah.
I might have fell into that little trap once myself. I might have been into it.
Yes, you did. They were the same wherever they were when they were out in clubs. They had to be the main characters. It was like in a film. Their life every day was like a film.
Without any shadow of a doubt, they were very proud of how they conducted themselves when they were out and active as naughty men, yeah, because they were portraying film characters, and they portrayed these film characters very, very well, yeah. They were as violent as they were, you know. In the films, George Raft could get away with shooting someone, and so Ronnie Kray thought that he could. You know what I mean? They dressed impeccably, they copied the whole American gangster thing.
They courted fame, they courted publicity. Yeah, they definitely did. They went out, they sought it. They had egos. They had big egos. I mean, Ron, towards the end of his days in the public arena, was mentally ill. He suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, and that, I think, caused delusions of grandeur. I mean, he became known as the Colonel. The house became known as Fort Valence. For a number of reasons, but I mean, that somebody who calls himself the Colonel, yeah, gotta be slightly on the egotistical side, you know.
Francis Wyndham, a Sunday Times journalist, was going to write a piece about gangsters, and he decided to do the bit on Ronnie and Reggie Kray, and of course, subsequently hired the best photographer at the time, which was David Bailey, and hence the famous photography, the famous photograph was born. You know what I mean? It's known the world round. It is attributed to their whole of their fame, that classic photograph. And in the actual book that the photographs were published in, there was also John Lennon, Michael Caine, and they did genuinely fall into the trap of believing their own hype and thought that they were of some superstar category of which the other people in the book were, but I'm afraid they wasn't. They were criminals, they were murderers. Now at this time, the journalist from the Times was actually comparing them to characters from a Dickens novel. You know what I mean? They were propelling them into some kind of superstardom, and that's when they decided to hire John Pearson to write their story. Now their ambitions were with the employment of John Pearson was to write a book, The Profession of Violence, and to later on make a film, you know, which was going on to the point of stupidity. They genuinely believed they were going to be movie-style gangsters when they were actually killing people just a couple of months before, you know. Listen, they really got the David Bailey bug, you know, after having the ever so famous pictures took with him, and in the same book as John Lennon and Michael Caine and the Kray twins. They genuinely believed they were superstars, so much so that they tried to befriend him and eventually got him to be his wedding ritual for his wedding. You know, it was bizarre. It was actually bizarre. They genuinely believed that they were superstars, whether it be in the film world or singing world or whatever, and was carrying on being active criminals. You know, it could only have ended up one way. That was a partnership led by someone that was a paranoid schizophrenic and nutter. Because you don't do them, do you? You know, you can't publicise yourself as a gangster and carry on being a gangster. You can't do that.
The Krays are mythical and iconic for one reason only, and that's because they were around in the 60s and they courted publicity. Those iconic shots that David Bailey took in the 1960s, part of the Picture Box album, were the reason that the Krays became not just nationally famous but internationally famous, and that's the key really. That box of pictures that Bailey took has got the Rolling Stones in, the Beatles and the Krays, and it's as simple as that for me.
I don't think John Pearson actually realised at the time what a long-lasting, myth-making success he was penning. Yeah, at the time, he just knew it would be a success financially because the whole Kray twin thing was still out there. You know what I mean? Them getting caught and all that, and so I thought it'd be an instant money-making project, but I don't think he realised himself in what historical proportion his influence by writing this book was going to have on the rest of the world forever after writing it. I don't think he could have possibly realised what sort of phenomena he was starting by that book. Yeah, he could never imagine it. He actually immortalised them and started the whole ball rolling on the Kray mania thing that there is today. They actually commissioned him to write that book, right? He didn't choose to. They paid him up front and told him to write it. They commissioned him to write it. And before that, no one had ever done that. And by choice, no writer would want to write about a criminal, not thinking that maybe the public wouldn't want to read it or it was morally wrong. But after they commissioned him to write that book, and he wrote it in a kind of romantically breezing over the naughty bits kind of way, sort of, yeah? He opened the door for everyone to then blah. We've all got a book in us, all of us. I've got about 8 or 9, right? But he had no idea whatsoever what he was doing when he wrote that book. Yeah? The Kray twins opened the door for everyone that is financially earning anything from their naughty past. The Kray twins opened the door for that. They made it viably possible for anyone to sell their naughty past. Yeah, they done it for you. So whether you like them or not, you've got to do that to them. Yeah. Profession of Violence is the second most popular book at the time in the prison system, other than the Bible. So, are they wrong in writing something that so many people want to read? It was romantic prison reading. The newspapers on their drive to convince the general public that the Kray twins were these master criminals, actually not realising that this book was going to be brought out, actually done the pre-advertising for Pearson's book. So by the time the newspapers had brought the attention of Ronnie Reddy-Gray to everyone in England, by the time Pearson brought his book out, it was obviously going to be a #1 bestseller because everyone in the whole country knew who these people were, and there'd been glamour, and how they knew who these people were was by reading the newspapers, which glamorised everything. Yeah, we all worked in concession with each other, you know, the advertisement, the court case, the book, the fame, you know, it all fell into succession in the right order, yeah, it was lucky. The actual book that Pearson wrote was the catalyst from which everything else grew, yeah. And there was no way in the world did he or them have any idea what that would actually be the foundation for, you know, a lifetime of legendary. It was beyond their wildest dreams, and it has gone beyond anyone's expectations of what you should think of someone that wasn't really a successful criminal.
Whether or not it led to their downfall, probably not. I think what probably led to their downfall was that they were nasty people, and they did nasty things like terrorising, extortion, murder. You can't get away from that. That's why they got banged up behind bars. But the glamour has already been recorded. It's already there in the public domain. So once they are inside, society then goes back to the time of glamour, to the 50s and 60s, when you have all these pictures of the Krays, and that is what creates the self-imagery of the Krays, and what makes them famous, more famous than perhaps criminals who didn't court publicity. They courted publicity deliberately. They liked it, they enjoyed it, they lapped it up, and I don't think they regretted it afterwards once they were inside. I think they were glad of it, because it gave the media, for example, material to work with. If you went to interview people, if you went to interview the Krays inside, you didn't just do the interview, you also had all this other memorabilia, all this other showbiz photographs. You had a wealth of material which they themselves had created. They created this world, so it's there for society to use, and that's what's happened.
For watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section.